My dad said he couldn't afford college for me. He said it every way a person can say it, sighing over bills, making that tight-lipped face that means I'm making him feel like a failure for even asking, clapping my shoulder with a heavy hand, and telling me I'm smart enough to figure it out on my own. You know that thing where someone makes their limitation your moral assignment? Like, because he can't, I have to rise. So for years I swallowed it and nodded and wore that false cheer every guidance counselor expects when they ask where you're going in the fall. But I saw where the money went. I didn't happen to see it. I didn't snoop. It was my job to see it literally because I was the one doing his paperwork while he and his new wife took a long weekend in Miami to clear their heads. Back up, because context. My mom died when I was 13. It wasn't dramatic, no fiery car crash, no perfect eulogies. It was a long, slow, fading and hushed conversations that trailed off when I walked into rooms. My dad cried once, maybe twice, and then the next week there was a chore chart. "We'll get through it," he told me like a coach with a clipboard. "We'll be efficient," which meant I became the default adult where feelings were supposed to go. It meant I did the grocery shopping because he always forgot the list. It meant I learned which bills came due when, because one winter the gas got shut off for 3 days and I didn't want to watch him pile every blanket we owned into a fortress around my little sister like that was a plan. There was a college fund. That's half a myth and half a lie. My grandparents used to give me savings bonds every birthday that had what felt like an impossible number on them. Mom would wink and say, "For college." There was also the story of the 529 plan. My dad told it at barbecues like a bedtime story for adults. How he and Mom were so responsible, how they were the kind of people who think ahead, his chest swelling with a hero's pride. He said it enough that I believed it like gravity. "My kid is set, she's going to have options," he'd say, holding a beer and laughing like life is that simple. Turns out either that was never true or it stopped being true around the time a certain woman with very white teeth started leaving her yoga mat at our house. That's not even the worst part. You can love who you love, I get it. People are lonely and grief is a maze. It's the way he made her arrival into a financial emergency that somehow belonged to me. Junior year, the conversation started in that patronizing tone people use when they're making sure the bomb they're dropping sounds like a fairy tale. "You know I'm not a bank, right?" he'd say, chuckling. "We didn't count on inflation." He'd add like he just discovered the concept, like that word would float me through tuition. "We had a deal, I keep my grades up, I stay out of trouble, and he helps." I did my part. I took AP classes, babysat, worked weekend shifts at a diner where my shoes stuck to the floor and men drew smiley faces in ketchup. He took his help and helpfully bought a brand new truck because the old one was making a sound. I got into 3 good schools, not fancy Ivy League, but solid, the kind you can be proud of. I cried when I opened the first acceptance letter because I thought that meant I could finally exhale. My dad took a picture of me holding the envelope. Later, he put it on Facebook with a caption about how it takes a village, and 47 people commented heart emojis. Dinner, he looked at me across the table and said, "We need to talk numbers." Numbers was really a monologue. He had this legal pad. He wrote down tuition in big scary slashes. He circled them. He underlined them twice. He said the phrase, "be realistic," so many times it stopped sounding like English. He cut to community college and commuter school like he was peeling an onion. He threw in words like debt and grown-up decisions, and "you're my pragmatic kid, you get it." He made me nod. If I'd said no, he would have looked wounded, and that would have been worse than angry. I said okay. I said community college, and I got a job, and then another. And I started slipping in the door at 11:38 p.m. smelling like stale coffee and fryer oil, and up again at 6:00 a.m. to get my sister to school because Dad's new wife has a stomach thing that flares if she's stressed, and somehow that means morning timeline is my job. My dream school sent 3 emails I didn't open because seeing their crest made my throat hurt. My dad said a lot of things that year that I wish I had recorded and spliced together. "You'll be glad you don't have the debt, trust me. We're building character, remember. It's different now with the economy. I want to help, I just can't." And one time when he thought I was asleep on the couch, he told his friend on the phone that raising girls is cheaper, thank God. He laughed. I memorized the sound. Now the part where I saw where the money went. We were doing FAFSA, if you know, you know. You gather tax returns and W-2s and bank statements, and you become an amateur accountant on a Sunday afternoon. My dad was exhausted, which meant he handed me a shoebox with receipts and flopped on the recliner with sports on low volume like he was doing something by osmosis. His wife had a friend's baby shower, but still found time to remind me that FAFSA asks about gifts, and I shouldn't include the $200 she gave me for clothes last Christmas because it was just love, not assistance. I made piles. I made a spreadsheet because it's how I survive chaos. I found the 1099 INTs and the 1099 divs and the 1040. And then, like a plot twist that sucks instead of thrills, I found statements from the 529 account. Let me be clear, I wasn't looking for them. I didn't know what the official statements looked like because this was the first time I ever saw one. They were there because he needed some kind of routing number for FAFSA and printed everything, I guess, and then got bored. There were withdrawals, multiple. There were dates. There were penalties. You don't get penalties for paying for school. You get penalties when you take money meant for education and spend it on other stuff. The first big one was 2 months after his engagement party, $8,400 and change. A couple months later, $6,200, then $4,000. The labels were vague, just distribution. But in this same shoebox, I found a credit card statement with a charge that matched a deposit at Blue Water Marina. Guess what else was in there? A T-shirt from a boat dealership. It said CYA in that tacky font that thinks it's funny. I sat there with the papers spread around me like confetti after a party no one invited me to, and I felt something I can only describe as a click, like a camera shutter. Like the moment you stop giving someone the benefit of the doubt because the doubt is gone. I wanted it not to be true. I wanted those numbers to be wrong. I wanted there to be some reasonable adult explanation. The thing is, I know math, I know dates, I know the exact day the "I can't afford it" lectures got louder, and I know the exact day that boat appeared in our driveway under a blue tarp like a whale carcass. I didn't say anything that day. I waited. I wanted to see if he would tell me the truth without being cornered. Spoiler, he didn't. He kept saying, "We'll make it work," and then he circled back to how I'm so independent and how he was proud of my grit, as if grit was a prize I chose. There were other tells, jewelry receipts, a bill from a resort in Aruba, a $3,200 charge at a place called Sweet Dreams that turned out to be a furniture store where they bought a ridiculous tufted headboard for the master bedroom. But the one that really made my hands shake was a deposit into his wife's son's baseball tournament fund. Not like a $50 anti-donation, like $2,500 labeled registration fee and another $900 for travel. My sister had outgrown her only pair of decent jeans, and we'd turned it into a joke about ankle breeze. They were in Aruba, and the stepbrother was in Florida playing travel ball, and I was cutting classes to pick up shifts because Dad had forgot to pay the internet bill and my online assignments didn't load. The confrontation wasn't cinematic. I didn't slam the paper down and yell, "Aha!" because that's not my style, and because I've learned that when you call my dad out, he gets slippery. He makes your feelings into the problem. He tells you you've misunderstood. He puts his hand on his heart and wishes you could be grateful because gratefulness apparently cures fraud. I waited until dinner the next week. Stepson bragging about a batting cage. New wife talking about manifesting abundance. My sister quiet pushing peas around her plate. I said very calmly that I looked at the 529 statements and I was confused because I thought that money was for college. It's almost funny, the way the oxygen left the room. Dad blinked like a lizard. His wife went, "Oh," in that soprano tone Labradors respond to. Stepson looked at his phone and smiled at something only he could see. My dad said, and I quote, "Well, those were my funds." He didn't say our families. He didn't say your mother, S. He said mine like a toddler on a playground. He went on, and this is the part that made me see red and then black. He said, "Your mother and I started it, sure, but things changed. We had emergencies." He made air quotes around emergencies. Life happens, and you're so smart, you're going to get scholarships. You don't want to be that kid who had everything handed to her, do you? I asked what the emergencies were. He sighed and said, "Don't make me itemize my life." I pointed to a marina charge. He said the boat was an asset. It's not, it's a hole you throw money into. His wife squeezed his arm and said I didn't know how hard it's been, how he's been under so much pressure, how she had a health scare, a benign polyp, and medical stuff adds up. They paid the bill with her HSA. I know because I paid it online for them. My sister whispered, "We have a boat," which made me want to cry and also laugh. When I brought up the baseball fund, the room went weird. His wife got fierce. She leaned in and said her son's talent is his ticket, and they weren't going to let it slip because not everyone gets to be a genius like you. She smiled when she said genius, like it was a slur. I asked about the savings bonds from Grandma. My dad said those went into the pot like we were doing communal soup. I asked him why he told everyone we had a college fund if it was gone. He said I was being dramatic. He said those posts were about pride. He said it made him feel good to have something to brag about. He said, and I will never forget this sentence, "You can't honestly expect me to live like a pauper just because you want to go to some school across the country." There it was. The entitlement as confession, the manipulation like garnish. He expected me to swallow the story that he was a hero for holding the family together, while he spent the money meant to launch me into a life where I wasn't stuck in the same small circle of strip malls and half-finished houses. He used my resilience as currency. He crafted a narrative where I was noble for giving up what I wanted so he didn't have to feel like a thief. I left the table. I packed a bag. I went to my aunt's house, the sister of my mom who doesn't tolerate bullshit. I cried the kind of crying that steals the air and leaves you hiccuping in a stranger's guest room even though she's not a stranger. She's the only person who ever asked me how I was and waited for an answer. She poured wine. She said, "I knew," in a soft voice that broke something open. She had tried to warn me, she said, but there's only so much you can say to a kid who still wants to believe her dad is a good man. We made a plan. There are good people in this world. My aunt offered to co-sign a small loan. I negotiated with my dream school for more aid. It's a skill. I learned the language of the bursar's office like another alphabet. I applied for every scholarship that didn't require I be 6 feet tall and left-handed. I took a gap semester, worked 3 jobs, and moved into a tiny apartment with 2 other girls who kept the heat at 62 degrees but split groceries, and have become my family in a way that doesn't require me to perform gratefulness to be fed. My dad responded to my absence with texts that started, "Hey kiddo," and ended, "We're a family." He left voicemails with strategic sniffles. He sent me a picture of the boat and wrote, "Come out on the water with us this weekend." Like that was the thing that would lure me back. His wife sent a paragraph about how resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, and how forgiveness frees you. She actually wrote, "We're all learning," like she was recapping a preschool circle time. When I didn't respond, she switched to, "I see you're choosing to be angry." When that didn't work, she sent a screenshot of a Venmo request for family internet, which I ignored on principle. I took care of myself. I learned to say sentences like, "I can't do that," and "that won't work for me," and not fill the space after with an apology. I stopped being the first one to always reply. I stopped running errands in the middle of class because no one else can figure out Amazon Prime. I watched my sister like a hawk and taught her how to do FAFSA without asking anyone for permission. She is 16 and practicing saying no in a mirror. She came to visit me and sat on my futon and looked around like she was at a museum. And when I offered her the better blanket, she cried and said, "It smells like you," and I understood what it means to build a home from scratch. I know people will write their own versions of this story in the comments. Maybe you'll say it's his money and he had a right to spend it. Maybe you'll say I'm ungrateful. Maybe someone will tell me about how they paid their own way and it made them strong. Cool, I've been strong. I'm tired of strong being the consolation prize for being denied basic care. The point isn't that parents owe their kids' tuition to fancy schools. The point is you don't get to leverage your kid's future to buy a boat and then call them entitled when they notice the missing water line. The other day, my dad sent a text that said, "Proud of you," out of the blue. No context. No reason. Maybe he saw a post from my aunt about my honor roll. Maybe he was having a moment. Maybe he wanted to put a band-aid on a bullet hole. I typed 3 responses and deleted them. I finally wrote, "I hope you're well." Sometimes silence is a boundary. Sometimes a bland sentence is armor. And I'm not going to pretend I'm over it. I'm not. I still have that knotted stomach when I pass by a marina. I still flinch when someone says manifest. I still do the math of what could have been if I had left for the school I wanted with the money my mother intended for me, if I had been allowed to be 18 without simultaneously being a manager of other people's crises. But here's a thing I didn't expect. The rage is clarifying. It cuts through the fog and shows you the path that is yours. I'm building something, brick by brick, assignment by assignment. I've got calluses I didn't ask for, and maybe that means when the wind comes, I won't tip over. If you're a parent reading this, and you're tempted to tell your kid a story because the truth makes you look bad, don't. Either be honest or make different choices. The worst feeling in the world is not being broke. The worst feeling is being lied to by someone who expects you to be grateful for the lie. My dad keeps sending fishing memes and family dinner on Sunday, texts that make it sound like all that's between us is a scheduling conflict. I keep not going. And it turns out nothing terrible happens when you stop showing up to be used. Last thing, my sister found the savings bonds stub in a desk. It has my mom's handwriting. For college. She took a picture and sent it to me with a heart emoji, which felt like a small, quiet rebellion. I printed it and taped it above my desk. When I log onto my online classes and the professor is buffering and my downstairs neighbor is practicing trumpet at 10 p.m., I look at the looping loops of her letters and think, okay, this is the promise I keep. If there is anything like justice here, it's this, that the money he spent will rot in the garage under a blue tarp, and I'll be the one who gets out anyway. TLDR. My dad told everyone he couldn't afford college for me and pushed me into community college and work while I did childcare bills and kept the house running. When I did FAFSA, I found 529 withdrawals with penalties plus receipts for a boat, resort vacations, furniture, and thousands toward my stepbrother's baseball travel. When I confronted him, he gaslit, called himself proud of my grit, and said I couldn't expect him to live like a pauper. I moved in with my aunt, hustled for aid, took a gap semester, and went low contact. I'm building my own way. The boat sits under a tarp. I'm leaving.